Meng Mei Lang, also known by her middle name Michelle, was born on January 29, 1991, in Chengdu, Sichuan Province, China. Michelle grew up to be a kind, thoughtful, and respectful girl. She shared a very close bond with her parents, so it was incredibly difficult for her when her father passed away in an earthquake in 2008. She excelled in her studies and dreamed of moving to Australia. Her mother, Mei Jiang-el, always supported her and believed that pursuing an education in Australia would secure a bright future for her. In 2011, Michelle enrolled at the University of Technology in Sydney, allowing her to fulfill her long-cherished dream of studying in Australia. Michelle's aunt, her mother's sister, lived in Australia and welcomed her into her apartment. The aunt also had a daughter who was 2 years younger than Michelle. In the following year, 2012, Michelle's aunt, who was 44 years old, married Derek Barrett, a man 20 years younger than her. Derek was an unemployed IT professional at the time and was only 3 years older than Michelle. Since then, Michelle, her aunt, cousin, and Derek lived together in suburban Campsie, New South Wales. The first few years went smoothly. Michelle thrived in her studies, made new friends, and found a part-time job during her free time. However, starting in 2016, Michelle's aunt frequently traveled to Wollongong for work, leaving Michelle, her cousin, and Derek at home in Campsie. In April 2016, Michelle's aunt went on another business trip and was expected to return on April 24th. 3 days before her return, on April 22nd, Michelle, who was 25 years old at the time, was out with friends. Around noon, she took a bus from the University of Technology, Sydney, to a downtown shopping mall. Surveillance cameras captured footage of Michelle shopping on Pitt Street in Sydney's central business district around 3 p.m. She was alone, appearing calm and undisturbed. Later, CCTV footage showed her boarding a train from St. James Railway Station to Campsie Railway Station, where she arrived at around 4:30 p.m. The Campsie train station was the last place Michelle Leng was seen alive. However, she continued using her phone that evening to communicate with friends and family. Those who spoke with her noticed nothing unusual in her voice. On Sunday, April 24th, Derek drove to the train station to pick up his wife, who had returned from her business trip. When Michelle's aunt asked Derek about her niece, he claimed he had not seen her for 2 days. At the time, Derek was unemployed, often staying up late on the computer and waking up late. He said that due to their different routines, he and Michelle hadn't crossed paths. He also mentioned that Michelle had been spending more time with her girlfriends and frequently visiting nightclubs. Michelle's cousin, who often stayed over at friend houses, also had not seen her in a few days. By then, no one had seen Michelle since April 22nd, and her phone had been switched off. This was highly unusual, as she regularly kept in touch with her friends and family in China. It was also concerning that Michelle had not logged into her social media accounts. In today's world, when an active social media user suddenly stops engaging online, it often signals something is wrong. Michelle's aunt checked her room, trying to determine where she might have gone. The room was tidy, with all her belongings in place, as if she had vanished into thin air. The next day, Michelle's aunt and Derek went to the police station to file a missing persons report. They also informed the Chinese embassy about Michelle's disappearance. At the police station, Derek recounted the last time he saw Michelle, while her aunt explained that she had just returned from her trip and had been unable to find her niece on her own. Tragically, by the time the police report was filed, Michelle's body had already been discovered. At approximately 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 24th, several individuals contacted the police to report a body floating in the water near Snapper Point, about 80 miles from Campsie. That same day, Australian news outlets reported the discovery of a woman's body. The report stated, "A woman's body has been found face down inside a blowhole on the New South Wales Central Coast. Authorities are treating the death as suspicious and have established a crime scene at Snapper Point in the Munmore State Conservation Area, located near Mooney Beach between Gosford and Newcastle. The woman, whose identity remains unknown, is described as being of Asian descent, between 20 and 35 years old, and approximately 170 centimeters tall. A post-mortem examination will be conducted to determine the cause of death. A rescue helicopter spokesperson stated, "It is unclear how long the woman had been there or how she ended up in the water." Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jubilant from a New South Wales homicide unit commented, "We are thoroughly reviewing CCTV footage and conducting investigations in the area. While I won't disclose specific findings, we are gaining a clearer understanding of what transpired." Now that the police had received a missing persons report from Michelle, they quickly cross-referenced it with the unidentified body found at Snapper Point. Unfortunately, Michelle's relatives were soon given the devastating news. She was the victim. Inspector Jubilant stated, "We have informed Michelle's family members both in Australia and overseas. We first spoke with her aunt, whom she lived with, and then reached out to her brother in China. It is heartbreaking news, and their grief is unimaginable. Authorities have urged anyone with information about Michelle's whereabouts or activities leading up to her disappearance to come forward and assist with the investigation, as they work diligently to uncover the truth behind this horrific crime." When the body was retrieved from the water, it showed multiple injuries, indicating that Michelle had been brutally attacked. During the autopsy, the medical examiner counted over 30 stab wounds on her body. She fought desperately for her life, evident from the defensive wounds on her arms. A few days after receiving the heartbreaking news of Michelle's death, her mother traveled to Australia, the place her daughter had always dreamed of living. She struggled to grasp the reality of her loss. "Even now, we cannot accept that she is gone, and we remain in deep sorrow. The time when Michelle and I happily lived together will never return. You cannot imagine the unbearable pain I feel. The greatest tragedy in life is losing someone you deeply love." As the investigation unfolded, detectives interviewed Michelle's aunt and her husband since she lived in their apartment, and they knew her well. Derek stated that the last time he saw Michelle was on the evening of Thursday, April 21st, during dinner. Afterward, they watched a movie, and Michelle then went to sleep in her room. On Friday, April 22nd, when he woke up, she was already gone. Since he usually woke up late, he assumed she had left early. According to him, when he went to bed that night, Michelle had not yet returned, so he assumed she was out socializing with friends. The following day, he woke up late again, and Michelle was still absent. Uncertain if she planned to return, he texted her, asking about her whereabouts and if she was okay. But the message remained unread. Michelle's aunt, who was away on a business trip, had no information to provide. Some Australian media sources reported that Michelle's aunt informed detectives that she had checked her niece's Facebook messages on her laptop. She discovered that Michelle had recently been dating an Australian man. "I've seen pictures of him. He has golden hair, pale skin, and intense eyes." Based on this, the police initially suspected Michelle had gone on a date with a man she met online. However, this theory was soon dismissed because investigators had already identified a prime suspect in Michelle Leng's murder. Derek Barrett was the last person to see Michelle alive. The police were suspicious of his account of waking up late and, as a result, not seeing Michelle. They called him in for questioning and asked about his relationship with Michelle, requesting details of the last time he saw her. Derek refused to answer further questions and demanded a lawyer. At that moment, he was informed that he was under arrest as a suspect. Investigators traced his phone signal and discovered that he had been in the exact area where Michelle's body was found on April 24th. This contradicted his earlier statement, in which he claimed he had never been near Snapper Point that day. Police also obtained surveillance footage showing a car matching the description of Barrett's vehicle near Snapper Point in the early hours of April 24th. Although the image was blurry, Derek insisted it was not his car. However, another security camera recorded clear footage of Derek at a gas station purchasing drinks and refueling his vehicle while en route to Snapper Point. The high-quality image left no doubt about his identity. When confronted with evidence proving he had lied about his whereabouts on April 24th, Derek suddenly claimed to have memory problems. He stated that he could not recall certain periods due to his frequent use of illegal substances. Authorities confiscated Barrett's phone and handed it over to forensic specialists to recover deleted data. What they uncovered left no doubt that Derek Barrett was not only involved in Michelle's murder, but also harbored a disturbing obsession with her. His own stepdaughter had also been a victim of his perverse desires. A 15-minute video from September 2014 revealed footage of Derek's stepdaughter taking a shower, secretly recorded using a hidden camera he had placed behind toiletries in the shared bathroom. Another video showed Derek entering his stepdaughter's room while she was asleep and engaging in inappropriate behavior near her bed. Eventually, Derek shifted his focus from his stepdaughter to Michelle. On his phone, investigators found a 30-minute video of Michelle showering, along with another recording of him satisfying himself while standing next to Michelle's bed as she slept. His phone also contained chilling images taken shortly before Michelle's death. Investigators established that Michelle had arrived home around 5 p.m. on April 21st. Around midnight, she sent her last text message. From that point on, no one heard from or saw her again. After midnight, Derek Barrett set his sinister plan into motion. He attacked Michelle, restrained her, and covered her mouth with tape to prevent her from screaming. Photos found on his phone showed Michelle bound and unclothed, her face filled with terror. At that point, she had not yet sustained the fatal injuries. The last photo Derek took was at approximately 8 a.m. on April 22nd, at which time Michelle was still alive. That afternoon, around 4 p.m., Derek's stepdaughter returned home. She was unaware that her cousin was restrained in the next room. When questioned by investigators, she said she had stayed home for about 3 hours before leaving again, but never heard Michelle call for help. Experts could not determine the exact time of death, but they confirmed that Michelle had remained in the apartment for the entire 3 hours her cousin was home. On April 23rd, Derek left the apartment 4 times to dispose of trash bags, all captured on surveillance cameras. By this time, Michelle was presumed dead, and Derek was likely attempting to clean up the crime scene. Michelle's aunt, Derek's wife, later told investigators that when she returned home from her business trip, the apartment was unusually clean, but she had not thought much of it at the time. At 3:19 a.m. on April 24th, Derek drove to Snapper Point. Along the way, he stopped at a gas station to buy drinks and refuel his car. Upon reaching Snapper Point, he disposed of Michelle's body and took additional photos. At around 9 a.m., about an hour and a half later, police received reports from witnesses who had seen the body in the water. The investigation into Michelle Leng's tragic murder was now fully underway. During this period, Derek Barrett paid a visit to his parents, who did not observe anything unusual in his demeanor before returning home to Campsie. Barrett was formally charged with 7 counts, including unlawful confinement, illicit recording, and the murder of Michelle Leng. Notably, he was not indicted for solicitation driven by immoral intentions. Like many offenders, Barrett attempted to gain sympathy by lamenting about a troubled childhood, claiming he was bullied at school and endured various hardships. However, many individuals mistakenly believe that a difficult upbringing justifies their heinous actions. His trial commenced in October 2017. A psychiatrist who assessed Barrett determined that he was fully accountable for his crimes. The specialist testified that Barrett had remarked, "I lost everything because of a foolish weekend." Barrett penned a letter expressing remorse to his wife and Michelle's grieving family. In it, he wrote, "No words can adequately convey the emotional torment I have inflicted upon you and your family. I can only imagine the suffering you are enduring from your loss. Every moment of my existence, I wish I could rewind time and erase that fateful day that caused so much anguish. I allowed my own issues to seep into our home, and my family suffered immensely as a result. The only way I can attempt to atone for my actions is to dedicate my life to making amends in any possible manner." In her translated victim impact statement, Michelle's mother, Tam-Mei Jiang, implored the judge to impose a life sentence upon the ruthless predator, merciless tormentor, and cold-blooded killer. She expressed a profound grief that enveloped her family after Michelle's passing in April 2016. As a single mother striving to support her daughter, an international student in Sydney, the tragedy proved unbearable. The overwhelming sorrow even led to the deterioration and eventual passing of Michelle's grandmother. This double misfortune dealt an irreparable blow to their family, leaving them in perpetual agony. Facing multiple charges, Derek Barrett ultimately pleaded guilty in December 2017. He received a 46-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 34 years and 6 months. Throughout his sentencing, Barrett kept his head lowered and displayed little reaction. He was initially scheduled for parole eligibility in 2050. However, subsequent developments altered this timeline. Following the verdict, Detective Gary Giblin addressed the press outside the courthouse, acknowledging the significance of the severe sentencing. The courts have acknowledged the gravity of this crime through the sentence imposed upon Mr. Barrett. From an investigative standpoint, justice has been served, but there is no solace in a case as tragic as this. It remains an immensely sorrowful ordeal. Michelle's family, however, found the punishment inadequate, as they had urged the judge to hand down a life sentence. The case, however, took another unexpected turn that forced Barrett back into court, inflicting further distress upon Michelle's loved ones. For years after the crime, a woman discovered a USB flash drive in the hands of her elderly mother, who suffered from dementia. The elderly woman, unconnected to Derek Barrett, resided approximately 6 miles from his former residence before his arrest in 2016. Due to her memory impairment, she was unable to recall where she had obtained the device, and the origin of the USB drive remains unknown to this day. Her daughter, curious about its contents, inserted the device into a computer and was horrified by the footage she uncovered. She immediately contacted the authorities. Upon investigation, detectives identified Derek Barrett in the videos, which depicted him gratifying his twisted desires and treating Michelle as a mere object rather than a human being. The recordings, dated April 22nd and 23rd, 2016, revealed the appalling extent of Barrett's depravity. Michelle Leng's dignity was cruelly violated by a perpetrator who took perverse pleasure in inflicting pain, humiliation, and degradation upon her. When investigators relayed these new findings to Michelle's mother, the distress was so overwhelming that she nearly lost consciousness. Barrett had strategically placed 2 hidden cameras in Michelle's bedroom to document his atrocities from multiple angles. Supreme Court Justice Helen Wilson, who initially sentenced Barrett to a maximum of 46 years, later stated that had she been aware of the full magnitude of his crimes in 2017, she would have sentenced him to life imprisonment. She condemned the abhorrent details of the newly discovered footage. A compilation of the recovered videos, totaling approximately 60 minutes, began with Barrett entering Michelle's bedroom. She was visibly alarmed and distressed by his intrusion, making it clear that his presence was neither welcomed nor consented to. Barrett's meticulous efforts to record his actions from various perspectives, coupled with his disposal of the USB drive, underscored his intention to relive his sickening crimes while evading detection. With the emergence of this incriminating evidence, Derek Barrett faced additional charges of vile misconduct against Michelle Leng. He pleaded guilty without offering any statements in his defense. In March 2021, he received an additional 20-year prison sentence. However, since the sentences were to be served concurrently, the overall duration of his imprisonment remained largely unchanged. Nevertheless, his parole eligibility was postponed by 2 years, making him ineligible for release before October 27, 2052.